Hi, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Profiles in Canada, the Scouts Canada web series, where we connect with Canadians who use their talents to the fullest for the greater good. I'm here with Professor John Meehan of the Bill Graham Centre for the Contemporary History at Trinity College at the University of Toronto. I'm Kayla Moniz, the interview host, and of course, Trinity College is where I go to school, and of course, where Professor Meehan was my professor, and is nearest to the 78th skyline in the Greater Toronto Council. But before Trinity, Professor Meehan was actually president of the University of Sudbury, closest to the 15th Sudbury and the first Coppercliff in the Northern Ontario Council. But before that, Professor Meehan was president of Campion College in Regina, nearest to the second Regina in Saskatchewan Council. And before that, Professor Meehan hails from Antigonish, where he was a Cub and a Scout. Professor, thanks so much for being here. I will say I'm happy I'm not interviewing you 10 years from now, or I might have more to say.
Hello, Caleb. It's good to see you.
Good.
And
Well,
hello, a shout out to all the scouts out there from a former scout.
amazing. So I want to get right into it, Professor. A key part of this series is discovering how our guests discovered their passions. So you're a historian. How did you discover your passion for history?
Well, I have a few passions in life, but history, as you say, history is one of the big ones. And I've always loved history. I love teaching history. I love living history. I love even being part of history. And when I teach history, I always, as you know from being my student in class, tell stories about my interaction with history. And I think we're all part of that. Like, I was fortunate to be in Berlin when the wall came down, or be in
Wow.
Hong Kong for the handover, or be in these momentous things. Uh, but I think that passion started very early for me, growing up in Nova Scotia. And Nova Scotia is a place with a lot of history.
Yeah.
And as a kid, playing around in the forts, Fortress Louisbourg, the Citadel in Halifax, picking up cannonballs. It was never boring for me. And my history teachers were all exciting too. And they brought history alive. Um, and as I got older, I realized, history is not a dead subject. It's not really about the past per se. It's the past interacting with the present,
Hmm.
helping us to chart a future. It's often said that, if you nations that forget their past are condemned to repeat it. And so as I got older and got involved, as you mentioned, in administration, other things, history for me was a way of approaching the world. That if we want to understand the world today and its problems and challenges, you have to know the history. If you want to understand Canada, where we are, where we might be going, you have to know this nation's history. And I would even say, when in my role as advising and counseling people, if you want to understand a person and their issues now and their challenges facing, you have to know that person's history, including our own history. So for me, history is it's global, it's national, and it's even personal. It's a way of understanding who we are, where we came from, how we got to where we are, and where we might be going. So I think history for me helps us find meaning to life in our world.
That's fantastic, Professor. Well, some people, some young scouts in our audience might love history class. Some might like
Yeah,
it as much as a cold sleeping bag in winter. What you just said, is that why people should take history in school?
well, that's true. Not all teachers are great teachers. I get that. But I would encourage scouts to delve into some historical topic that they're interested in. It could be, um, when I was younger, I was obsessed by my own family tree. Who is my family? Where did they come from? And this is long before Ancestry.ca and things like that. Like, I was just intrigued by where my ancestors came from. That was very personal. So yeah, scouts, what are you passionate about? That's really important in life. I talked about history. Maybe, you have other passions, and that's great too. But for me, history was a big part of my passions in life. And it helped me. I find in our world today, things are moving so quickly. We might feel a little bit uprooted and lost and disconnected. And so for me, history was a way of reconnecting with my past, but also with who I am. And I think it's very important to, no matter what your passion is, our passions get us in touch with who we really are. And it's in discovering who we are that we discover what is our contribution to the world.
Well, that's incredible. You mentioned the world at the end there. I will mention, Professor, you are very well traveled. As you said, obviously you were in Berlin when the wall fell, and that was the end of the Cold War, more or less. You were in Hong Kong when the handover happened back to
Yeah.
China. You were in Rome with the Pope, I recall as
Yeah, I was
well.
right in front of the Pope when he got attacked in 2009. If you
Oh,
Google
geez.
attacks Pope, you'll see me. And yeah, that was quite
Well,
an experience.
fortunately, he was okay afterwards, as
He
students of
was, and
history will
yeah.
know. But yeah, no, that's great. You're also a polylinguist, Professor. Can I ask how many languages you know?
I never counted them all, but I did my grade 11 in France, so I learned French, and I
Right.
returned to France after my undergrad. I did history, Russian at McGill as an undergrad. Then I taught in Japan. I taught Russian and English in Japan, so I learned Japanese. Then a few years of Spanish, and then I spent some time at the Vatican Archives in Rome, so I learned a bit of Italian. And then when I wound up in Regina for 10 years, I learned a bit of Cree because I worked with the indigenous there. So learning new languages all the time. And I'm a big believer in immersion in a different culture, a different language. I mean, Canada is made up of many cultures and many languages. And these give us a huge advantage in dealing with the world. And when we know a language is like a key that opens up a whole new world. And so for those of you who speak, and yourself too, Kale, who know another language, you know it gives you a different way of looking at the world. And we're so blessed in this country to have, you know, a bilingual country, and encourage people, if you don't know the other official language, spend time in French Canada to learn it, but don't stop there. Uh, Once you learn another language, the other ones get easier. And Europeans, learn three or four. And I think as Canadians, we shouldn't complain about just having to learn a second. And I wouldn't stop with just two.
Well, Professor, you're the director of the Bill Graham Center for Contemporary History. Bill Graham, of course, was our former foreign
Yes,
minister who believed very much in global citizenship.
that's right.
Maybe some comment on why it's so important for us as scouts, but also us as Canadians, to engage in the broader world around us.
Well, if we look at Canada, we are the product of many nations, of many cultures. Of course, the First Nations who were here before the Europeans, and then all those groups that came in from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, Latin America, that made this country what it is. And that's the strength of this country. And the Honorable Bill Graham, the late Bill Graham, knew that and encouraged people to become global citizens. And that's what our center does, trying to live out that legacy that Mr. Graham left us. Why is that important? Because Canada is a part of the world. We cannot just close ourselves off from the world. And although we see in the media now countries trying to do that, for Canada, that would be a losing proposition. Our prosperity depends on trade with that world, but not just trade. Our livelihood, our identity, um, our role as a global citizen depends on the world. If you think of Canada and its international engagements, peacekeeping, Commonwealth, Francophonie, United Nations, um, and on it goes, Organization of American States. We are part of a bigger world that we cannot cut ourselves off from. That world is key to not only our prosperity, but to our identity and our flourishing. And that is so important, regardless of where you come from. We come here, we make the country better, not just to stay in this great country and forget about the rest of the world, but I think we do that to go back out into the world to try to make the world a better place. And
You know,
Canadians are ideally positioned to do that.
you mentioned some of the top multilaterals, so essentially forums where countries can work together,
Yes.
that Canada has traditionally been a part of. Do you see a place for Canada as a leader on the world stage right now?
Well, we've been a leader. We've been a leader in the world with things like peacekeeping, United Nations. We were there when the United Nations were formed. Um, Maybe we've lost it. Maybe that leadership has slipped a little bit. We can get complacent. We can get preoccupied by our own problems and forget about countries that don't have the blessings we enjoy.
Hmm.
Um, but I do believe Canada is called to be a leader. We have been a leader in the world, and we can't turn our backs to that history. That's a very important history. And when I teach the history, as you learned in my class, really it's a history of Canada as a global leader. global citizen. And that is incredibly important because there's a real lack of leadership in the world today. We look at the superpowers as supposed to be our leaders, but what happens when they start putting up walls? So I think there's a real Canada has always been multilateral, um, and we have to remind countries that just turning in and being nationalistic is not the recipe to success. In fact, that could be, as we've seen historically, um, the route towards economic warfare and even military warfare. So, um, what does it mean to be a peacekeeper? What does it mean to be an engaged, responsible global citizen? The problems we face in the world today don't respect national boundaries. You know, environmental problems, the rights of indigenous peoples, economic problems. These are global problems
Right.
that require global solutions. And so we need global citizens, and Canada can really lead the way on this to say, look, let's get beyond our national boundaries to work on some of these global problems.
Well, that's very fair, Professor. In which case, I would ask, for the purposes of our audience, who might be interested in history, who might be interested in perhaps diplomacy, what advice would you give to them on making a meaningful difference for
Well,
themselves, for their communities, for
if
their
you're a
country?
scout and if you're young and you want to make a difference, not just locally, but also nationally and globally, I would encourage you to learn another language, to learn another culture. You're young, you can do it. Your brains are adaptable. It's a great time to learn it. Uh, Look at spending a year in another culture. It's the best thing I think I ever did. Um, and once you learn another culture, you can learn another one after that. And that will enable you. It's not just good for you getting a job and a career. That's an obvious point. But beyond that, you will be able to understand people who are different from you, different cultures. You will be a bridge builder. And in a world where we're putting up walls of all kinds all over the place, we need bridge builders. And I think that's the beauty about being a scout and why Baden-Powell set up the scouts was not to be passive and watch the world go by, but to be engaged and to make a difference locally, nationally, and globally. So I think we're all called to be bridge builders. And scouts, you're off to a good start because you know how to do that locally. And so if you want to do that on a larger scale, like I say, go learn a language or a culture, a different way of doing things. And based on that, you might go on in your studies, you're doing Calum and many others, not just an undergrad, which is kind of like a high school degree these days, uh, but graduate school, professional school, so that you can really have a wider impact on society.
Well, that is I think, fantastic message to leave off on. Professor Meehan, thank you so much for sharing your
Okay,
time
and
with us.
thanks,
It's
Caleb, and thanks for all you're doing with the Scouts, and thanks to all the Scouts who are making a difference, because the world definitely needs you, and you're going to have such a big impact in whatever you do in life from here.
The world needs more scouting. Fair enough.
You got
To everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us. Our next episode, it's going to be in 2 weeks with another great Canadian who uses their talents to the fullest in the service of their country and, of course, their communities. So I look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, thanks very much.
Thank you, Caleb.